Alright. They are making their selections from their teams. Beheaded Minato on MadFnorder's side, Polar Knight Remiliss Syrus on OgreYama's side. This is a much anticipated fight between two highly skilled players. MadFnorder is the two-time winner of PAX Unplugged, one of our two major real-life tournaments, along with Gen Con. OgreYama is an experienced playtester who, I believe he started on Season 4 in playtesting, but he's been involved with the game since Season 1. Oh man, I don't believe OgreYama has attended an in-person tournament, but he is well known in the Discord community for his experience and his involvement in events such as this. First round is Minato versus Syrus. These are two zoners. This is going to be a long-range fight. This is pretty intense. Alright, let me get those names up on the screen for you. Ogre has mentioned he is nervous about facing MadFnorder due to the man's fearsome reputation. Hey Boogie, good to see you. However, MadFnorder has a secondary reputation as the King of Salt, known for going on tilts when things go awry, despite his best laid plans. Is it awry? Is it awry? I don't know. When they go pear-shaped. Alright, creating those references. Mad comfortable without grabbing a Syrus reference card just in case. Skimming those stats, making sure he remembers them correctly, I'm sure. So Minato is a highly technical character who can careen into oblivion and crash and burn and fiery death if he makes a single mistake. If he doesn't make a mistake, he's one of the strongest characters in the game. Syrus is a range 3 or greater, usually around 3 to 5. Long-range zoner, likes to keep away, likes to poke out his opponent with fast attacks, and run the Assault Spike mix-up from range 4 to 5. He has answers to Minato's range tools. Minato has answers to Syrus's range tools. This will be an interesting fight. We have some very unusual projectile shapes this game. Title roll is 2 to 3, 3 to 6, with hit, push, pull 1, that is a Syrus card. It's not a true projectile, it's a mid-range. However, his 3 projectiles, Aria, is an above curve 2 to 5, at speed 5. Siren Call is 3 to 6, 4, 4, with 4 guard, meaning it is the Hadoken's shape, but with 4 guard. And Albatross Talon, 2 to 5, 5, 3, with 3 guard, meaning it is a cross-counter shape. So 3 completely different projectile shapes. Minato has jumped the Shark, which is a pseudo-projectile, hitting only range 3 to 4, at speed 6. Very effective at poking out Aria of the Winds, but Syrus's other 2 projectiles have guard on them. He also has Cab Stand, a speed 5 card that can hit from range 4 as long as he's willing to spend the force on it. Of course, being Minato, he is never out of resources. And Flight 13. 5 to 7, 3, 4, but the range is deceptive. It actually just hits the opposite side of the board, everywhere except the center space, because it has a retreat on it, which allows you to back up to one edge and then hits the 4 spaces on the other edge of the arena. Turn 1, Minato opens with a Defend. This is an unusual play for Minato. Perhaps telegraphs that Flight 13 is on deck, waiting for Syrus to throw one of his trademark projectiles. Syrus considering his moves carefully. 4 is normally a very comfortable range for Syrus. Alright, boost. Both players draw up to 3 cards and take another action. This is a Riptide. It is found on Dread Fury, one of Syrus's Ultras. Both players have chosen to draw 3 cards. Minato getting ahead of things. Syrus has another action to take. Telegraph said he has both Barnstormings in hand, however. That's a little bit of information that Syrus could have done without. Alright, Syrus' second action. Normally when you play this boost to draw 3 and take another action, you telegraph the reading threat. Let's see how he follows it up. He's at 8 cards now, so he needs to spend something. He could easily play a Treasure Hunter here, get a normal out of hand, build some easy gauge, drop down to 6 cards, then draw to 7 at the end of turn. Information is an extremely important commodity among high-level players, meaning you, while you do want to get to your good cards as fast as possible, and racing through your deck is a perfect reasonable way to do that, throwing stuff into your discard means hemorrhaging resources, which is a very dangerous prospect. Alright, Syrus plays the move 1 then draw a card boost on Tidal Whirl. He needs to draw for end of turn. Skip that end of turn draw. Needs to discard another card. So he's hemorrhaging some information. However, dropping a copy of Spike also makes him less vulnerable to readings, since it is a very common reading target. There are a lot of things that beat Spike. It's very good as a hard read card, but it's not super reliable. Treasure Hunter is a mid speed. It's 1 in 5/4. Has no defenses on it. It has hit push 3, meaning it is a sweep counter, effectively. It's kind of like a backwards cross. Hits at close range, pushes the opponent away instead of retreating. It's much less safe than cross, however. Makes sense to get it out of his hands. It's probably not going to be very useful in this matchup, because at close range, the only thing that Minato has is Bust Stop. That said, you do want to be able to counter Bust Stop. Minato strikes, telegraphing Flight 13. So not much Syrus can do about it at this point. Best you can do is hit first with the Eye of the Winds, or potentially EX dive in or assault forward just to give himself improved range when Minato does retreat. Now the good news here is that Minato is going to back up with this attack, if it is what it's telegraphing, leaving him at long range against Syrus with 1 copy of Flight 13 down. Minato will almost certainly not prefer to stay at that long range. At range 7, Syrus doesn't have any options, but at 6, Syrus's options are much superior to Minato's. Syrus choosing his response. Now with 2 boosts in play, Syrus's character ability, if you're wondering what these boosts are, is that when he resolves an instant boost, meaning after he performs its effects, it enters play as a face-down continuous boost. So those are continuous boosts that read, per his character ability, hit at the sheer gauge. So if he lands a hit with his next attack, he will gain 2 extra gauge off of it. This will not hit, however. He wild swings a sweep. They are skipping ahead to resolution. He discards his boosts, and his attack will be discarded as well. Minato needs to discard cards to retreat. He discards only 1. And hits for 3 damage. However, damage isn't the real value of this card. Now, he's gotten both spikes out of his deck. That's very much a mixed blessing. He doesn't have anything to threaten Ignore Guard and Armor, but at least he is not as vulnerable to the reading threat. Outrun the Past is the true value of Flight 13. Before you set cards for a strike, meaning whether you're on offense or defense, before you set your attack, you may seal up to 4 cards from your discard pile or gauge in any combination, and for every 2 cards you seal this way, you draw a card. Now, this looks like a draw engine, but in reality, it's a sealing engine. Minato's whole deck is about manipulating his sealed pile in his hands, moving stuff between his discard, his deck, his gauge, his sealed area in his hands, to set up late game combos and just become a stats monster with the use of the Bust Stop transformation, which we'll get to later. It's called Fractured Memories. This is important. This transformation, Outrun the Past, is important because it lets him seal cards from his discard pile, regardless of order. So Minato's character ability lets him seal cards from the top of his discard pile. However, Outrun the Past lets him seal cards from anywhere in his discard pile. Alright, we do have a reading come out from Syrus. They're at range 6, so Syrus is threatening Siren Call here. Or he can call something that causes Minato to advance, and thereby threaten Siren Call or Albatross Talon. A number of reasonable options here. If he wants Minato closer, then playing Siren Call and naming, for example, Grasp would be a reasonable play. Alright, looks like he didn't call Dive. We see both Barnstormings, both Foci, a Jump the Shark dive. So that's 1/1/4, Barn, Shark, and Streetcar are in hands. Alright. Minato plays Barnstorming, looking to evade. Is successful. Unfortunately, that is 1 Barnstorming down, so that was a fairly expensive maneuver. He's going to need to get that back in his hand at some point. Barnstorming is another valuable attack with a valuable transformation. Much better attack than Flight 13. This one's made to be an evasive move at close range. Lets him duck from one corner all the way to the other, thereby avoiding sweeps and focuses and similar things. Alright. He's played the boost on Streetcar. Now seal up to 4 cards on top of your deck. For each card sealed this way, +1 speed. Chose to seal 3, evidently. Sealed 4, 5, and Hellward. This is perfectly good. He wants to eventually collect basically 1 copy of everything in the sealed area, except for his transformation cards. Getting that Hellward in there means that he'll be able to recur it with a copy of Cab Stands, and get it back into his hand that way. So he has +3 speed, and he's at close range. This is highly telegraphing a Bust Stop, but actually we didn't see a Bust Stop in that hand, so it's kind of interesting. It does mean that he has a speed 8 Barnstorming, so a completely unanswerable Barnstorming attack. Syrus deciding what to do about that. If he has a second reading, he may be able to, let's see, trade with or possibly beat a focus. That'd be a speed 4 or speed 5 focus. So if Syrus plays Reading Cross, he could hit that focus and retreat with little damage done. That would put him squarely in the range of Jump the Shark, but Jump the Shark is fairly low value at this point. It's mostly used as an answer card against enemy threats. It's very scary to know that he's holding one, but he doesn't like to use it on offense. Jump the Shark is most potent in the late game because its hit effect gives him +1 power for every 4 cards in a sealed area. Right now he only has 3 card seals, so it'd be a shame to deploy this early. Syrus considering his next move. Syrus is at range 1, which is unequivocally his worst possible range. Most of his kit doesn't function at range 1. Alright, Tech, yep. That'll discard that boost. Interest plays a face down continuous boost per Syrus' character ability. Minato clearing off those counters. Minato's turn, parry. Parries the focus. Okay, the reading threat was live. He's getting rid of that. That is both readings down on Syrus' side. This is very unfortunate. Part of Syrus' utility is in getting a reading into gauge and then being able to recur it using the transformation on Albatross Talon. That line of play is now dead until post-reshuffle, which is going to be a long way away. You can't afford to race to your reshuffle against Minato. This is because of the quote-unquote Minato line of play, which involves Minato using the boost on Hellward Bounds to force both players to discard cards from their deck. Once Minato's recursion engine is fully set up, he is able to last essentially forever without having to draw cards, which means he can force the opponents to run out of deck before he does. This threat forces the opponents not to play particularly aggressively, and it buys him time to get himself set up. Alright, we have a reading from Minato, getting one of those focuses out of hands. Looks like the reading misses. Probably a spike. We have 247, Aria, Albatross, Symphony. Sweep here is fairly safe. On the other hand, this could be the other Barnstorming. Minato really wants to land Barnstorming. So the question is, will Syrus defend on curve with Grasp, or defend with Sweep against something slower? Minato could also be trying to land Bus Stop if you happen to draw it in the last 2 turns. Bus Stop is Minato's highest value transformation. Oh my goodness. Alright. Calling out the defend on curve, he played a Grasp, which will stun out Syrus' defensive Grasp. Yep, the reading there telegraphed the Barnstorming threats, and then Syrus will be punished for his answer. Risky but effective play by Minato. Alright, Syrus is picking up that hands, deciding what to do with it. They left the reading on board, but they'll clean it up when they notice. Syrus is in a bad spot. That Grasp was out of hand, there were 2 normals left, so this is probably a good time to play lights. Yeah, that's gone. But he's behind and he's lost a lot of his early momentum. It's also reasonable to change cards or just prepare and try to draw into his answers. Preparing, however, is what we call a low tempo action. It means that you're basically committing a lot of opportunity cost into relatively little gain. So you're only drawing 2 cards that way. Change cards will let you draw more cards. And if you're really trying to get to something, you need to get to it as fast as you can. The idea here would be that Syrus needs to draw into his... Okay, that's a move action. Draw into his transformations, so that he can play them directly from his hands without risking losing combat. Combat, especially with Outrun the Past in play, gives Minato opportunities to win strikes cleanly if you can read his opponent. Speaking of reading, well, there were a couple of no normals still in that hand, so he's going to call one of them and then play his own. Yep. Reading dive, play dive, hit for 5, that is free damage, and both foci, which means both known normals, are out of Minato's hands. I believe that's all of his known normals that were known. Syrus still has a known sweep in hand, but that's pretty hard to punish, and anyway, both readings are now down on Minato's side. For now. Syrus now back at range 1, 11 life down, and his engine has not even begun to be set up. Minato's startup is a little bit slow, but he'll be okay. He has a tidy discard pile that he can use to seal for force for a change cards action to reload it almost instantly. Once again, Minato's character ability involves sealing cards from discard pile from the top of his discard pile specifically, 1 for 1 to generate force, or 3 for 1 to generate gauge. This is whenever he needs to pay force or gauge cost, of course. You can't just seal them willy-nilly. Alright, we have an assault by Syrus, a failed read with the Barnstorming. Minato will take 4 and get his first punch of the game. He's got some blood in his shoulder now, and it's Syrus' advantage. This may seem like an odd play by Syrus because he didn't choose to retreat. He chose to play range 1 assault, which is an undercurve. It's basically a mid-speed. It's undercurve, but it's reasonably high reward because it doesn't change your positioning and it gives you advantage. The trick here, of course, is... Oh, what have we got? The follow-up is Sweep. That is going to be pretty punishing because it knocks that card out of Minato's hand, forcing him to spin force from either gauge or discard pile. Chooses to spin both gauge to take no damage. So here's the thing, right? Syrus doesn't like range 1, but the normals all function around range 1 to 4, particularly 1 and 3. This means that, alright, yeah, so here we have the change cards action, sealing cards at the top of his discard pile to reload. Organizing the discard pile to make it easier to read. But yes, because everyone has access to normals, there's no one who's completely unplayable at close range. Even Syrus, whose kit just doesn't function at close range, still has more than half of his deck made up of normals. This allows him to play even in a situation like this just by leaning on the more common half of his hand in his deck. Alright, Minato organizing that sealed area to make sure it's easy to keep track of. Reloads, drawing a total of 6. Means he sealed 5, although I wasn't tracking what he was sealing. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yep. Yeah, he sealed Focus, Dive, Grasp, Barnstorming, and Jump the Shark, if I recall correctly. Syrus preps, Minato boosts Lights. He doesn't have access to Barnstorming at this time, but he could, and he could be threatening a cross or a bus stop. Alright, Cyrus advances. At range 3, he is basically threatening a Tidal Whirl, although Minato can beat it if he plays a Jump the Shark, Cab Stand, or Assault. Cab Stand would be an unlikely play because the boost in Cab Stand is very high utility. Much like Remiliss's Caustic Vents, it gives him access to some recursion, which is important for keeping his instant consistent. With Minato initiating, he has +2.5, so to speak, speed, making Syrus very unsafe on defense here. This could be the spike. No, actually, hold on. I think both of Minato's spikes are down. We saw at least one drop. But the threat here is essentially an assault-like or a... it's move, don't move, right? He could play a Flight 13 at speed 6 to retreat and hit from range. If he has a spike, he could play that, which will crush anything defensive. And if he has an assault, he'll come in, lose certain defensive options, but still end up at range 1, which is a pretty good way to end up against Syrus. Syrus choosing his defense. You may notice that Minato's not choosing to use Outrun the Past when he's setting his attack. It's not really time for it yet. He needs Fraction Memories in play in order to get the most value out of it, because it lets him instantaneously EX attacks, basically, by sealing 1 copy from the discard pile. Again, I'll talk about that more if Fraction Memory comes into play. It is the Assaults, and it's Albatross Talon, which is going to lose handily. Alright, Minato again at close range, now with advantage. Syrus needs to discard that boost. There it is. Yep, boosts go away first. Discard pile order does matter, not as much for Syrus. Definitely matters a lot for Minato. You'll see Minato and Remiliss players in particular paying a lot of attention to their discard order, whereas Renea players pay a lot of attention to their opponent's discard order. Alright, Minato has advantage. He's at close range. This is a good time to play a bus stop, but it will lose to Grasp. He could also just play a raw streetcar from hands, depends on how cheeky he's feeling. Changed his mind about that strike at the last second. What'll it be? Syrus very nervous, kit full of ranged options. His wild swings are not very consistent at this range. And I believe we've seen both foci down and at least 1 sweep. Oof. Treasure Hunter trying to beat the bus stop, gets hit by Grasp. Minato chooses to push Syrus into the wall, and it is now Cyrus's turn. He's left with even fewer options than before. You'll notice that if you recall, when he spent Symphony of the Deep for a move action earlier, that card left his hand, which means it's no longer available for the boost right now, which would be very useful. The boost in Symphony of the Deep is specifically meant for getting out of situations like this. Silver Shadow lets him move to any space at range 3 from the opponent. With that inaccessible, Syrus relies on playing the boost on cross, taking a move action, or finding the other copy of Symphony of the Deep or Tidal Whirl. Yep, that's a move action. He cannot afford to be cornered. It's a painful decision to make, but we do what we must. Alright, Minato's turn. I believe 1 copy of Tidal Whirl is still being threatened. It's crucial that Syrus hold that threat over Minato's head. just like it's crucial that Minato hold the threat of Jump the Shark over his head. Fun fact, you might want to compare these two arts. Jump the Shark. Title roll. That sure is Minato getting eaten by the water shark. Alright, so Minato boosts Hellraiser, the boost on Hellward Bounds. This is both players discard the top 4 cards of the deck. You may then return up to 2 cards from your sealed area to your hands. He milled at least 1 copy of Cabstand there, which is pretty important. That's an important recursion tool. Looks like we had at least 1 Assault out of Syrus' deck, which is both copies down. You probably check the discard to see what else got milled. Mill is a term for Magic the Gathering, if you're not familiar. It just means discard cards from the top of your deck. He then, let's see. Yep, drew Barnstorming, Jump the Shark from his sealed area. He's leaving them face up as a courtesy to his opponent. Aha, okay, there's the Symphony of the Deep. Looks like he drew it at the end of his last turn. Once again, takes a move action with it. Minato should still have access to 1 Flight 13 unless he milled it, which means he's checking, probably checking that discard pile now to see what he has available. Looks like he's, wait, what? Yeah. There we go. Yeah, he accidentally moved it directly from his gauge to his sealed area instead of his gauge to his discard. Alright. Minato running in, continuing to pressure Syrus at close ranges, where he knows Syrus' kid is weakest. So, he has no hidden information remaining, which means he, again as a courtesy, not as part of the rules, is choosing to reveal his hand to his opponents, because it is fully deducible and it's just a matter of saving time. It's 2/6 and 1 of each special except for Cabstand, so I guess he milled both Cabstands earlier. This is pretty important because he needs that to enable his recursion engine. He's going to be reliant on actually hitting with the cards that he has in his hand right now. Minato really doesn't want to consume his reshuffle. He wants to use effects like the hit on Barnstorming to get an extra quote-unquote shuffle, allowing him to continue going through his deck again and again and again without risking death. It looks like in this game he might not have a choice. However, Syrus is already down 12 life. So, Minato still has enough damage on board to threaten lethal. Not this turn, of course. Syrus considering his options. This is a difficult situation. If he reshuffles now, then he knows that he's vulnerable to Minato potentially landing Barnstorming and being 1 shuffle ahead of him, so to speak, in the race toward not decking out. Decking out is a colloquial term in card games used to refer to when you die due to running out of cards. In Exceed, you get 1 reshuffle. Whether it happens automatically or manually is your business. But either way, the second time that you need to reshuffle, you die. Syrus really has no good options here. Depending on what he has in hand and left in deck, he might be willing to take this fight at close range. I believe both grasps are down. If that is the case, he will not have an answer. It's not quite true. I believe both grasps are down and probably both crosses. If I'm mistaken, however, he has an answer to Barnstorming. He needs to answer Barnstorming or Bus Stop. Okay, takes the move action to back up. That drops an Arya and a Siren, I believe. Steadily running out of those ranged options. Steadily running out of all of his options, to be honest. Minato is probably going to take the move action to advance. Oh, is this to change cards? It sure is. Alright, he has consumed his reshuffle. This is important. Because of how much he seals out of his deck, Minato tends to run lower on deck size than the characters. So he has reshuffled and he has 14 cards remaining. Normally if you reshuffle you're going to have upwards of 20. Syrus is 2 cards away from his own reshuffle, meaning a lot of information is down and the 4 cards that are, well, there are 3 unknown cards remaining. The card in play is a face down continuous boost. He's revealed it as a courtesy because his opponent asked what it was as a reminder. This is pretty standard practice as well because this is not a boost that enters play hidden. It is a face-up boost that is flipped face down, so it's known information, or what we call hidden trackable information in board games at least. Unlike Renea, who boosts face down and intentionally keeps them as hidden information, this is pretty trivial to remember, or to at least note down. So that is a run. That was a run, which means that we've definitely seen both crosses down. There are 3 cards remaining. It looks like Minato is counting cards to figure out what they are. He's trying to determine if he has a good way to set up the following few turns. Okay, Syrus chose to reshuffle to prevent that information from becoming fully known to Minato. Both players have consumed the reshuffle. Yeah, Syrus has 27 cards. Minato boost run, jumping into Syrus' face. He is currently threatening a bus stop, which will only be answerable by Treasure Hunter or Grasp. Alright, both players drop 3 cards, take on their action. That is Riptide again. They both choose 3 from the look of it. Syrus' second action. Alright, both players drop 3 cards, take on their action. Minato now might be a little bit more careful. He has to be wary of that reading threat. If he draws too deep into that deck, he will have a difficult time getting rid of those cards using strikes. It also increases the chances that he'll have a normal in hand that his opponent chooses to play reading to a target. It may be that he's still considering that decision, or he's decided to draw 0. Either way, Syrus will have another action to decide. It never pays to be too greedy when digging through your deck. If you're a character like Minato, who runs very thin on his reshuffle, it's actually quite possible to run out of cards and die that way. If his opponent had perhaps 7 or less life remaining, then he could be more confident in getting enough damage to kill him. But block can slow down your rate of lethal, and at 12 life remaining, it's still possible for him to run out of cards. Especially because Syrus is a very mobile character. So Syrus now has 3 boosts in play. He wants to build that gauge. He's going to strike with an EX attack, threatening practically everything here. From EX Grasp to EX Treasure Hunter to EX Assault. Alright, we have Focus, which is a very safe defensive play. Is going to get hit. That is both Grasps down, which means Syrus does not have an answer to... that's not quite true. Treasure Hunter will still answer Bus Stop. But he trades down, which he can't particularly afford to do at this stage. Pass the turns Minato, and they're still at range 1. He was hoping to get some positioning value out of that from the look of things. Focus was a sensible defensive play by Minato here, because at range 1, there is just nothing Syrus can do against Focus while he's cornered. The only thing he can do in normal circumstances is cross out of it, or be at range 2 or 3 and play Spike, or 3 and play Dive. Minato picking up those known cards, shuffling his hands, probably preparing to strike. One card. Alright, probably the Bus Stop. Demanding that Syrus has the Treasure Hunter, or an Assault, answering the Treasure Hunter in advance. Syrus is taking his time, trying to think about what he can play to answer his opponent's threat. Range 1 is just not a good range for him. Syrus counting that gauge, looking at those discards. Wondering if perhaps this is Streetcar for an immediate lethal. Plays Treasure Hunter against Bus Stop. Oof, gets stuns. Minato shuffles those discards into his deck, gains advantage, deals 3 damage. That is a very high value play, especially because he has advantage. He's at range 1, and that's Treasure Hunter down, which is 1 fewer answer to Bus Stop. At this rate, however, Bus Stop is important only because it's threatening lethal. Diffraction Memory Transformation probably won't come into play at all. We have a single card strike. Oof. Syrus looking to counter a cheeky assault or something similar, although there were no assaults remaining, so I'm not sure of the call there actually. Gets a hit in first, and then we'll take lethal in return. Bus stop spins 2 force for +2 power. That's game. Alright, game 1 has been decided in Syrus's disfavor, sorry, Minato's favor. Let me put that up on the screen. Players are choosing their second matchup. So Minato, as the victor, is not allowed to participate in another game this set. He won, so he's dead. That leaves him with, let's see, Beheaded and Carl. The Beheaded is a Season 4 character. Carl is more of a comfort pick from Season 2. He has a lot of experience with Carl. Looks like that is who he is considering, at least, pulling that character back into his hidden area so that they will be revealing their choices simultaneously. OgreYama still has Polar Knight, Remiliss, and Syrus to play with, so he has a free choice of whom he will run next. Beheaded is... So Carl is a close-range grappler, a very powerful range 1 powerhouse. Beheaded is... He's an all-ranger. He's a ramp character who builds up in abrupt increments and kind of turns into a snowball that crashes into you for a ton of damage in the late game. In the early game, he doesn't have much power and he's not especially threatening, but he still has decent utility and good boosts to control footsies. Which he tries to leverage into landing a bunch of stray hits, basically, to build up gauge and exceed. Beheaded is a character who, rather uniquely, can exceed more than once per game, at least uniquely since Season 1. Each time he exceeds, also, he will gain a permanent stat bonus. It applies only to his specials and ultras, but it still makes him a pretty dominant late-game character. Polar Knight is a defensive tactician. He's kind of a heavyweight who controls the board states by placing ice spikes, which allow him to deal extra damage whenever his opponent gets tossed onto them. Or when he hits them and they're already standing on one. And Remiliss, of course, one of my favorite characters. Oh, here we go. Alright, so Polar Knight and Carl. Couple of heavyweights duking it out here. Let me get that up on the screen. Not that you can't see them, but you know. Polar K. Sure, it'll work. Alright, comfort picks on both sides, really. Carl is a character that Matt has a lot of experience with, and Polar is probably Ogre's most played, at least Season 4 character. Oh man, look at those card backs. Now that's the real competitive edge. Pretty. Alright, Polar Knight choosing to go first. His prerogative, as listed in the previous game. Already in mulligan. Matt has yet to draw a starting hand. He also still has a bag in his hand. Polar Knight Logan's 3. So let's talk openers. Polar Knight has 3 main openers. 4 if he's willing to throw a lot of resources in. These are Polar Plow, a range 1 to 7 attack, meaning it does cover cross from opening positions, which is super important. It also covers dive due to having 6 guard. In general, it's just gonna hit. It doesn't really fail. It only does 5 damage, but it's pretty reliable. The main problem with it is that then you lose access to it for, you know, the rest of the shuffle. Well, you lose access to 1 copy for the rest of the shuffle. You also lose access to Overpower, which is a very important boost. Alright, he opens with block. Carl responds with EX Dive, throwing a lot of resources into a punish that only gets nominal value out of it. Poor Niken spins, he spins 2 force to take no damage. It does make it Carl's turn, however. Blocking from range is the best time to block against Carl because he does have a range 1 spike, as we call it, which means a range 1 attack that ignores armor and guard, or otherwise just manages to stun both sweep and focus. And typically block as well. So, he's threatening Swangy Elbow, Swangy Elbow, excuse me. I've recently been told that's how it's pronounced, I don't know. Making Polar nervous about playing defensive moves. However, if it's not that, it could easily be a Grasp, a Power Short, which is another very powerful close-range move that counters Grasp for a lot of damage, and beats Sweep, simply because